Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar. We really appreciate your time. It's so great to have you here. We'll probably leave it another 30 seconds or so to give any latecomers a chance to join as well. But please feel free to put in the chat if you'd like to say where you're joining in from today, whereabouts in the world you are. We often get people joining from all over the world, so these webinars. So it's always great to see where you're calling in from. I see some familiar names already, which is nice.
Come on.
So this webinar is all about data-driven excellence, unveiling the BrightBirds approach to university engagement. Really looking forward to getting into the conversation with some of our guest speakers, and we'll be exploring some tangible strategies for student engagement and success measurement as well. We are recording the session, just to let you know, but we'll share a copy of the recording afterwards, of course. If you have any questions as we go through, please put them in the chat. We'll try to keep an eye on the chat and try to include your questions as we go through the conversation. At the same time, it might be that the question is more relevant later on. Perhaps we're going to address that very question later on in the slides, for example, or through the conversation. So it might be that we won't answer your question straight away, but we'll kind of wait and see. But as I say, please feel free to ask questions. If there's time, which hopefully there will be, we'll leave some dedicated time at the end. But typically, yeah, we try to cram a lot of stuff into 1 hour. So it might be that we run out of time for questions and answers. But if that is the case, we'll certainly make sure there's an opportunity to field your questions later on via email or through another meeting, of course. Okay, well, just to say a little bit about what's going to happen today, we're going to be talking a little bit about Edumundo to start off with. I'll be going through some slides just to give a bit of a background on the company and what we do. We'll be talking about engagement in general across higher education, Generation Z or Z, and a sense of belonging within the higher education community. We'll be talking about our solution, BrightBirds, the BrightBirds app and service. And we'll be talking then around 3 main topics, which will hopefully leave around 10 or 15 minutes for each, with our panel, who I'll introduce shortly. So topic 1 is all about engaging university life from the student perspective, thinking about sticky campus, culture, community, those sorts of things. Topic 2 will be all about engaging university life, at this time from the university perspective, and we'll be thinking about also, well, sustainability and other hot topics such as global citizenship. And then topic 3, we'll be thinking about the data collection and generation that's possible and useful for the higher education community, not only through BrightBirds, but also in general, and how those are used as key metrics to kind of drive improvement in engagement and other satisfaction metrics. So there's quite a lot to cover. Perhaps before I go any further, I might just quickly stop sharing and allow our distinguished colleagues here to introduce themselves. Perhaps we'll start on the right here with Stefan.
I was going to say ladies first, but that's okay. Hello, my name is Steven Platt, or Stefan Platt in Dutch. I'm a business administration lecturer from Han University of Applied Sciences, which is in the east of the Netherlands. I also have an own company in gamification and in motivational design. And so I do a lot of things, but that's about it.
Right, thanks, Stefan, for joining us today. I'm Merel, and I have 12 years experience in education, of which are 5 years in higher education at the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht. And there I've worked on curriculum redesign and onboarding for first years. And this summer I started at Edumundo as an educational expert and as head of BrightBirds, and that's why I'm here today.
Okay, my name is Huub Molenaar. I'm a former lecturer of the University of Rotterdam, chemical engineering, and we were one of the first universities in the Netherlands who used the BrightBirds to get a better engagement with our students. So I'll be happy to share all that information with you today.
Sounds really great. Thanks, the 3 of you, for joining today, and well, really looking forward to getting into the conversation. So I'll go through a few slides now just to give a bit of background before we go any further. A little bit about Edumundo. Well, we're really, a company that's completely focused on student engagement and student success. We're very much present in in the UK, of course, working with about 60 institutions, but we're actually working, all across the Netherlands, Europe, the Middle East, well, the whole of the whole of the world, in fact. So we're really an international company, established 23 years ago. So yeah, we've been around for quite a while, with around about 40 employees and working with quite a large number of institutions worldwide. We also have some really great experiences to pull upon from the corporate sector as well, having also sort of been involved with starting the market leader for employee onboarding as well, which is some really great experiences we can pull back and feed back into the higher education sector as well, of course. And as you can imagine, a significant number of students benefiting from our products and solutions each year. In the UK, well, some examples of UK institutions and Dutch institutions here that we're working with. We'll be referencing some of these institutions later in our conversations as well, as we give some practical examples of the ways that BrightBirds is currently used to support student engagement across HE. So in terms of what we do as a company, well, we can really spread our product portfolio across these 4 different lines, which are represented by these colors on this slide here. So on the blue on the left, that's our management simulations, typically often used at business schools, covering most business school subjects. These are team-based activities which are normally embedded across the curriculum, across the semester, within a dedicated module linked to the learning outcomes and to the assessment approach within the module. And the purpose, of course, is to drive engagement and boost employability skills, as well as allowing the students to constructively apply the subject matter theory in a fun way. So that's the management simulations. In the green, we have the EduBook, something that we've launched more recently since 2017. And this, we have really a textbook replacing platform where we're trying to make the reading process as engaging and as fun as possible for students, also layering some gamification techniques as well. We've engaged with some really top authors there, a hugely interactive and enjoyable platform, and a wide range of titles. So if that's of interest, please let us know. It's also not just subject-specific titles, but also some more generic titles like study skills, employability skills, personal development, culture and communication, and a range of other things as well. So it can be used anywhere within the university. In yellow, and perhaps most relevant to our conversation today, we'll be talking about BrightBirds. This is our engagement app, our smartphone app, which allows students to take part in challenges and well, get a whole range of push notifications via their smartphone. And this is all about boosting engagement, motivating students, trying to boost this sense of belonging. Again, something we'll be talking about a lot today. And it's really kind of meeting students where they are, giving the tools and technologies that students feel most comfortable using. Lastly, in the purple, we have EdStacks. This is one of our most recently launched products. And this is about kind of providing micro-learnings, so smaller chunks of content to students, just-in-time learning, flipping the classroom. And we have a range of topics that we can provide there as well, also covering things like skills and personal development and a range of other things as well. Okay. Excuse me. Well, what is engagement? Well, perhaps that's clear to everyone here as well, but I just thought it would be helpful to take this short sentence from the Advanced HE website. The extent to which students are motivated, passionate, and curious about their program of study, HE provide a community they live and work within and its immediate environs. So, yeah, so we're all on the same page. I thought that was a really helpful kind of summary, really, about engagement. We'll be sharing these slides later as well, by the way. So there's some tables here on the bottom here, which are kind of going into more detail on some of these things. And we can unpick some of this later in the conversation as well. So in terms of BrightBirds, well, this is about activating forms of teaching and learning. So providing the learning in a more kind of contextualized way and making the knowledge more applicable really to students, more relevant. And we've got a little quote here from Rotterdam, University of Applied Sciences. So students like doing challenges and collecting points, the gamification, of course. And this is why BrightBirds works wonders for the motivation. You can see it's all about this motivation, helping to kind of really provide this relevance to students to kind of take part and get involved, really. Generation Z. Actually, I think I'm taking your slides now, Meryl, aren't I? So I'm going to hand over to you. I just realized.
You did brilliantly on the engagement one.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
that one. Thank you, Leon. Generation Z, that's the generation that actually is arriving at the moment at universities worldwide, and it covers about 32% of the global populations, which is a lot. And we have to realize sometimes that this generation is really different from the ones that we grew up in, because this one has never ever seen the world without internet. And if you ask them what was a cassette recorder or something like that, they just don't know. They don't know a world where not everything was accessible in a minute. And this also means that they're used in learnings in small bites and in a lot of different channels. I mean, if they want to know something, they just Google it or put it into YouTube and they have their answers. Learning should be quick and it should be attractive for this generation. And what they want most of all is entertainment. The other part that we are going to talk about today is a sense of belonging. If people start a new part or a new chapter of their lives in which they go to university, for example, it's new, it might be scary, and what they need most, at first at least, is feeling at home. They need to find their spot and their place at university. They want to fit in with the population already there. They want to fit in with the cultural aspects of the university as well. They want to be a member of the community and they want to feel supported by the university in their journey. And if we look at some numbers, in the United Kingdom, non-continuation rates from the first to the second year vary between 1.2 and 21.4% amongst higher education institutions. So there are still a significant number of students that quit after their first year or during their first year. And developing a sense of belonging is a very crucial part of the decision-forming process in which they decide to leave or not to leave the university when they experience difficulties. And the more they feel at home and the more they feel this positive sense of belonging, the less likely they are to leave. Then we'll move on to our solution, the product BrightBirds. A few fast facts. It's an application on the smartphone. We picked this form of communication because the smartphone almost is becoming an extension of Generation Z. They go nowhere without it and they're always on it. And it's their preferred forms of communication. It's usable worldwide. It works on every smartphone. And it's also made to work in quick bursts. So students receive a notification that there's a challenge set for them and they can usually complete that challenge in about a minute, maximum 5 minutes. So they're actually learning in very small bites. They're being engaged in small bites. They can do that on an individual level or in groups or in classes. So you can vary in which they work together. And we have some standard packages, also some standard topics that we provide. One of them is the My University topic, which we're going to talk about more today. The My University topic focuses mostly on the student journey and what we call in the Netherlands, the onboarding part of university, the part that makes students feel at home. Then we have some sets for skills and personal development and also for global citizenship that covers probably mostly about SDGs or feeling at home in the world. What's your place in the world? What can you actually do to make it a better world? And if you want something else, we also have the custom project part where you can just hand us your project and we'll gamify it in this application. Why do we use BrightBirds? Well, there are a few reasons for that. It has aspects of gamification, so we use different types of challenges. We can use polls or video challenge or an open question. It works with a scoreboard and voting, so there's a part in there that students recognize actually from social media. They can post something and people can vote on, for instance, the best study tip. We work with badges, which is motivational because they actually can compete and they can reach certain levels while they're developing skills or knowledge. And you can also use the badges for micro-credentials. There's, of course, a part of data generation in there that students don't feel like it's a survey. I mean, it's a challenge for them and we get data. So they fill in a poll or make a multiple choice quiz. And then we, on the other hand, on the tutor dashboard can see what happened and how engaged they were and what they were thinking. If we move a bit to the right in the green arrow zone, we have the motivational part. They can actually see their own progress towards reaching a certain badge or a certain reward. And the loyalty part is that they play together and they can do challenges to get to know each other. And this way we also foster the sense of community whilst engaging students. And all these factors lead to more student engagement and more student success. This is an example of what a challenge looks like on a smartphone. Yeah, there it goes. There are different steps in doing a challenge. So you get a notification and then step by step you can finish the challenge. And if you have finished it, the points will be rewarded to you. This is the other part. This is the tutor dashboard. And in this dashboard, you can actually see the data as a lecturer or a dean or what your function may be. And we use the dashboard to monitor the progress and usage of the app. We can also look at the rankings or show the rankings to the group. And there's also an overview in there of what challenges are still to come.
Yeah, so hopefully that's useful. It's to give a sense of what we're the context of what we're going to be talking about today. Is that the last slide for now, Meryl, or was there one more?
I think it was the last one.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Well, yeah, really helpful. And I think perhaps it's also useful just to kind of say that in the context again of the conversation we're having today, that we'll be referencing the NSS a lot today. And also PTES as well. So NSS being, well, these are very UK centric terms, of course. So the National Student Survey and also the Postgraduate Taught Experience Student Survey as well. And yeah, well, whilst these are really important to most UK providers, there will be similar things, of course, in other countries as well. And perhaps important also to kind of mention that these sector-wide kind of surveys, they only really capture the information and feedback from students who make it to the end of their studies, essentially. So those students who may leave early, that doesn't capture their feedback, of course. And it could be argued that perhaps those students who are dropping out or leaving for whatever reason are that's arguably even more important to capture that data as well. So yeah, we'll be referencing NSS today, but perhaps it's kind of useful to think of it more as just, satisfaction surveys in general, really. Okay, well, straight into the first topic then. I think perhaps let's just say, yeah, we're going to be talking, maybe allowing 10 minutes or maybe 15 for, thinking about the student perspective of engaging university life. So perhaps a question to Hoob to start with. But maybe all of you as well. What about some specific examples of successfully engaging students in university life, and I suppose the impact of that on the student experience as well?
Yeah, well, thanks for putting me on the spot, Leon.
No worries.
One of the, we're in a particular setting at the chemical engineering department within our university. You get a particular set of students, which very much are in science, math, A-level students, which have always been very good at a high school level, and then they come to university where it's a different environment, a more formal setting, if you want. So one of the things we wanted to do is break the formal distance between lecturers and students. So we use the BrightBirds app, for instance, in induction period. They had a scavenger hunt where we used the app to lead students around the building, and then hidden in certain places where the tutors or lecturers were the QR code which they had to find and scan. And by doing so, in an informal way, we met with the students and the students met with us, and it's thus breaking that formal distance between the two groups. That was one example of, I believe, closing up on the social distance between the students and the lecturers, and hence, bringing more bonding to the two groups. And we continue that throughout the program. For instance, I was looking at my notes yesterday in preparation to today's meeting, and you know, around Christmas period, you have this ugly sweater competition where people have to wear this weird Christmas sweater. And, you know, we had a video or photo challenge where students were to look for the tutors or the lecturers and make a picture of them together, you know, happily sharing the worst or the ugly sweater. Again, a low barrier entry to getting into the lecturers community if you want for students, and building that bond which you need to get that engagement going. So these were two typical examples where we built on building that social connect between the lecturers and the students, just to give you an example on your question.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. And what about also around kind of linking it back to the kind of academic side as well? Because I think you're talking a lot there about helping students kind of feel that bond with the university, or that connection with the university. But what about how it links back to the academic part as well?
Well, you know, chemical engineering, you do a lot of lab work, and that's a very formal process because of safety, for instance, and it's very much from the lecturer to the students, you know, with process and procedures, and you follow the procedures and then you get your results. But we want to flip the classroom that way, but still being safe. So we did things like, very early on, we sent them into the lab with a challenge to find particular lab equipment, make a picture of that, and go and find on Google or some other search engine what the purpose of that equipment was, how it functions, and report that back to us. So in this way, the students was proactively looking for information rather than us sending that to them, which fits very much Generation Z. And as you can see, I'm not the youngest, so my distance to that Generation Z is really large. So for me, it helped me to talk to them, if you want, in a way which fits them best, with the tool which fits them best as well. And yet, we obtained the objective, namely for them to understand the functionality of particular equipment in the lab. Another example is sort of also in the flip the classroom mentality, for them to come, you know, the subjects which we deal with are quite challenging, I would argue. Even for very good students, it's quite challenging from an academic perspective. So as we knew this was the thing they were facing, we want to make them bond with us while we try to explain to them the difficulty of the subject. We asked them to come prepared, and we used the BrightBirds app to make them to engage them prior to the lesson, for instance, by asking them to come prepared and ask 2 or 3 questions about the matters which they read about and couldn't understand. So we as lecturers knew prior to giving the lessons to them where the difficulties were, and we could address them in greater length and a greater depth. By doing so, you help the students, and then later on we asked them, did it, you know, are you happy with the lesson, and did it fulfill your needs and met needs? And you keep the communication going, which is very important, particularly around difficult subjects, but also with large communities of students. So in that way, with the social, with the academic, we start building that bond, and the BrightBirds app really created that tool to make that bond go well.
Yeah, well, really helpful, Hoob. Yeah, thanks for the examples. And Meryl, perhaps to you, like in terms of coming back to the more social aspects then of what's important to universities, and thinking about sort of trying to foster a more vibrant kind of culture within the university, really. What would you say are specifically some of the examples which BrightBirds can be used to kind of address those unique needs of students as well?
Well, we're talking unique needs. We live in a world where people want to be accepted and want to have the space to be themselves without having to ask for it. They want to feel like they belong. So we, for instance, did for the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht was that they did have gender neutral toilets, but they were not on every floor. So you had to know which floor you needed to go. So we made a challenge where they were sent to find the gender neutral toilet. So it was kind of a playful way to actually let them know, you're safe here, we have this space for you, and here it is. So they didn't need to look it up on the university website or find it by asking a lecturer. They could just find it themselves in a fun way where everyone was the same. Everyone wanted to get those points and get the inclusivity badge. So they all went there, and the same was for the the silent / prayer room we have somewhere on campus. We also made a challenge for that one, and this way we wanted to let them know that they were seen and were safe as well. So that's a big part of inclusivity and feeling at home, also the sense of belonging, which you foster in this case as well. And if we're talking about culture a little bit more, then we, for instance, could focus a bit more on the international students. For instance, the University of Salford, the business school, the International Business School, has a program prior to students arriving in Manchester where they want to help them feel culturally at home. So they want to focus on what are the differences, what might be the same, what can you expect when you come here. And they have developed a very nice workbook for them to do prior to arriving. But it's sometimes quite hard to motivate students to do something in a workbook up front. So we applied gamification to that part as well by using BrightBirds, by giving them little push messages to ask them, hey, have you seen this question? Have you filled out this part? Do you feel like you're prepared for the cultural transition? And by using this, intermediate, BrightBirds is kind of an intermediate between arriving at campus and doing the workbook up front. We saw that people, or students in this case, made the students actually finished up the workbook more often than they used to. So in this way, you can also make sure the students are culturally prepared.
Okay, and yeah, well, thinking about then, so our participants that have joined us today, if any of these participants are looking for some kind of practical and tangible ways to adopt, to help their institutions adopt more innovative practices, what would you say would be like some key considerations or best practices to think about based on, well, the experiences that we all have in this room of working with universities?
Well, I think we can all answer this question, but maybe it might be nice to let Stefan get a word in as well.
I was going to say, a lecturer holding his mouth for so long, that was quite hard. Yeah, just from my perspective, just to give it a bit of context, 6 years ago, I was at the base of this whole, product or idea about adding gamification to a curriculum or to a certain project. And that was because I was coordinating 6 programs, or the first year of 6 programs, and I wanted to make it more fun and challenging and effective. And especially on the effective side, because we didn't talk a lot about data and data analysis up to this point, but I didn't have any data to steer during the year, right? So the only thing that happened was after a year, students fill in some sort of survey, and then we can only work, as I say, curative, right, instead of preventive. So I wanted to be on the steering wheel. I wanted to be able to coordinate with real life data. And having that said, I wanted to, at the other end, make the first year more fun, challenging, and effective for students, and also for us as a university. So combining these two created basically what we are talking about today, is really challenging students throughout their first year, or throughout the process, which gives us valuable data and that we can use to actually improve the curriculum during the year instead of afterwards when it's too late. So that's more or less the challenge I had, because we have a lot of dropouts in the Netherlands. The curriculum was not really designed for Generation Z yet, or Z. What is it? Z or Z? Z.
Either is fine.
So, so we had a lot of what I said, dropouts, so we try to really look at what makes these students drop out and what can we learn from them, and that's an important aspect also within a first or second year, is that students disappear, but then also again afterwards they are being asked, why did you leave, or what was not okay about your study program. But then it's too late. So we want to address all these facts throughout this first, let's say 100 days of first year, which is a very important period in the student life cycle, I would say, or in the student journey. And I have a lot of examples, of course, of how we did this. We included all the activities in a certain calendar for them. So let's say we had an international teaching or an international week, which normally students wouldn't visit that in that much or great numbers. So now using the BrightBirds app and program as a sort of gamification umbrella, I would say. I'm not sure if that's the right sentence, but we use it as an umbrella over all kinds of loose activities that are happening throughout the year and in the student journey. Because most of the time, what I see, at least from a Dutch perspective, there is an induction period. There is a international week. There are all kinds of activities, but they're all loose activities. And with this program, we try to link all this together in one program, and then you get valuable data, and you can play with it as a tutor or as a coordinator. That's very fun. So coming back to, and then I will shut up. Coming back to to this international week, normally we would get like 50 students in, which is a bit, it is an event, and then I put it into a challenge that they had to visit this international teaching week or this international week, and they had to find a QR, I believe, somewhere in this event, and it turned out that there were 200 students that year, 200, and even people got mad at me because they wanted to have a warning in advance that there were so many students showing up, which is of course a good success, but that's and so there's lots of examples in which you can put in this program to actually engage the students and use the data also to make your program better.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks, Stefan. And I'm sure there's quite a lot more to say on this as well. But at the same time, given the time, I'm keen to move on to our next topic as well. So really useful already to hear about like some of the examples from a student perspective. But now we're going to kind of flip it over to thinking about the same sorts of things, but from the university perspective. So given that, in the context of fostering a sense of belonging within a university, and also like how a university kind of defines what it is to be a student at a particular university. It's challenging, right? There's a certain kind of set of values, I think, which each university tries to uphold and tries to instill within their students. But how do universities successfully translate that? Who wants to take that one?
Well, sure. It's quite hard actually for a university to engage students in participating in the university culture, because there's a lot of stuff that's already coming towards them when they're starting a new university life. And what we see a lot is that universities have a very nice website in which they actually promote certain cultural aspects of university life. Sometimes there are activities as well, or groups that students can join, but you really want it to sink in with the entire student body. So what you can do actually is make some challenges for the cultural aspect. For instance, the University of Salford is very much an advocate for sustainability and wants it to be embedded in the university life. So you put a strain of challenges in the BrightBirds system, talking about sustainability and what it is for them, what they can do as a student, and also in the critical note, what they see Salford doing for sustainable Salford. Because sometimes when you look at sustainability from the university's perspective, you see different things than when students look at it. And you actually want students and the university to see the same. So BrightBirds can actually help bringing those perspectives towards each other as well.
Okay, all right.
And maybe I can add, we have a program for student well-being at the Han University. Which is it's a well-being circle. It has 6 dimensions, but anyways, that's activity that is set out by the board, right? But now we have also the opportunity to test if students also feel the same about their well-being, because most of the times we are talking about students or over students, but we don't really get them involved in this process. So we wanted to give them more a saying in how we manage their program, basically. So we asked students about this well-being wheel, which of these aspects they find most important, and I believe it was flexibility and health, which are the two key issues for them to stay well, right? So and we had about 800 students filling this out, and don't think about a big survey, because they don't fill out big surveys, but just a small challenge or a poll in which they state, okay, I really think this is the most important aspect of student well-being, and so we can act upon that and put some more efforts and resources towards these two dimensions of student well-being, and leave the others a bit out, which I'm not saying that they're not important, but according to the students, they're less important, right?
And I think what you did there is really important, because you actually gave the students a visible vote in what was going to happen. And usually when we send out surveys, we forget the last part. We are really so happy that like 20% of the student body filled out a survey, and then we go run with the survey. But students don't know, or not always know, what happens with the results. And because they don't know what happens, they get less and less inclined over the years to fill out surveys for us. And then you actually lose some footage with them, because they think their opinion doesn't really matter. And we're really running towards, we want to help you, we want to listen, but there's kind of a miscommunication or a communication gap. And if you actually do it in a small way, which they're inclined to fill out, and you have an immediate feedback response, and you show students that you did something with what they said, then they will get more invested in the university and in their culture as well. They want to participate. And they want to be seen and heard.
Yeah, and as I said before, we are using plan, do, check, act cycles. I mean, improvement cycles, right? To steer the program, to be able to manage these programs, and you get real life data back from the students. So again, you can, as a university, it's very nice that you have the opportunity to act upon this immediately instead of waiting for a year. And students now also see the results of this action straight away, instead of just handing in the survey, and then the effects of this survey or the outcomes are only for students who come after them, right? So, or who are in a later year.
I think that's what you did actually too, Huub, with your curriculum.
Yeah, we had a challenge. As you can imagine, Leon, chemical engineering is a hard subject in general. And we used the old teaching methods, which didn't fit well with the new generation. So we went through this journey, we as lecturers basically, and used the data which we collected with BrightBirds over a period of 3 years, and understand what was motivating and not motivating, what worked, what didn't work. And we amended our curriculum actually to the needs of the students. So we redesigned our total curriculum. And now it's running, and even now in this new format, we still keep the BrightBirds app going to monitor whether it still fits the generation Z or the next generation beyond that, and make sure that we adapt our program without losing track of what we want to fulfill and to bring in the professional chemical engineer to the industry. So the academic part is maintained, but it is presented in a different way and is adapted, getting the info from the BrightBirds app. And just like Stefan said, it's really short cycles. So you can immediately, once you've done a particular subject, you can close the circle by understanding how they went, and then amend your program accordingly. So it means that the teacher then immediately has the tools to work on modifying the program and become it more effective and efficient. Yeah. And yeah, if I may dwell on, I'm a teacher, so I'm allowed to talk longer than expected. But, we saw the results also. You mentioned the National Student Survey in the UK. We have similar things in the Netherlands. In fact, every year in its 4 years program, the students are asked to submit a survey. And, we had a 3-year involvement. And over that 3 year, we saw the grading which we got from our students going up significantly, which is a reflection of what they experienced over the years. And not only that, but also the participation rate of the students participating in that survey went to almost 100%, which is another indirect sign, if you want, of the effectiveness of involving them into the university life and involving them actually in the curriculum to some extent.
And if I may point out why you would need an app or this app to do this, that's actually because when I was teaching in higher education, and you would ask students, what do you need from me? What can I help you with? The answer was mostly, nah, I'm fine. Or it was complete silence. It's sometimes really hard to overcome the generation gap, and my generation is slightly younger than yours. But it's really hard actually to talk to them in a way that they feel engaged and they feel safe to share with you their needs and their wants. And if you do it in a survey, students probably don't even read their email. At least in the Netherlands, they don't. So they don't even know they have a survey there. And if they find the survey and it takes longer than 5 minutes, they go like, nah, that's too much trouble. So that's actually where the app comes in, because it's really low key. It's their preferred method of communication, and they feel rewarded because they can get points for a simple survey question of what of the 6 parts of the wheel would you want us to focus more on, or what works for you in our curriculum, A, B, C, or D. So it's really, really low key. It has the gamification shell that Stefan already talked about. And I think this way of generating data really fills the gap between talking to the students and sending out an anonymous survey.
I think there's some.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I think some observations basically, because I think that's been some really insightful words from all of you there, and it was making me think about, a lot of universities are trying to really push this idea of, students as co-creators or students as partners within the learning journey or the university kind of journey. And in order to kind of truly be able to claim that, you have to, exactly as you've outlined, it's not just about waiting until the end and getting data in order to, apply for future students coming in the following years. It's about getting that as early as possible. And I think, Stefan, your examples there were really helpful. Like, actually, yeah, let's get that information as early as possible. How is it going, in order that we can actually make tangible kind of adjustments to things if necessary, to be able to kind of bring things back on track. Maybe
I can add to that, because if you look at a dashboard, and probably Mail will show it later on, you can also see how students or how certain classes or groups within your program are doing. So how are they doing? Are they active? Are they interactive? How do they value their program? But also we ask questions like, do you ever think about quitting the program, right? And that is an essential thing also within the student journeys that you make. As Merel said, you want to address that or those questions early in the process instead of too late, because then you're too late. And you want to do this with a low barrier, right? So you want to do, and that's why we make it a bit more fun. So for students, it's fun to answer difficult questions, but it gives you a lot of data which you can use to talk to a certain class, because we had like 28 groups of 30 students, for instance, so we could monitor really well how these classes were doing, and also in the ranking. So the classes that were behind, we actually went there. I asked the teachers, or the, how do you call them, the study counselors,
Personal development teachers.
Well, yeah. So to focus on these aspects. For instance, if we asked them, how would you rate your motivation for this program? Well, there were classes that scored very high, but there were also classes that scored very low. And of course, that's who you want to talk to, right? At that point, not wait.
Yeah, well, no, absolutely. Well, really insightful. And I think also, just to kind of add from my perspective as well, that, and this kind of, I think, was also teased out from what you were saying as well, that if we are going to have some meaningful kind of iterative improvements made as a result of the feedback that we get, we also have to be confident that that feedback is representative of the student body. And so if we only have a very small proportion of students submitting these survey responses, then well, that's not particularly helpful either. So we really need to kind of up that. And one interesting thing I spotted was that I think that I read somewhere that the sector average for in the UK for the PTES results, the postgraduate taught experience survey, the sector average is only 21% in terms of survey, number of people responding to those surveys. So, clearly there's big work that we need to do to try to meet students where they are in order to make them feel like they have a voice and that they should, complete these satisfaction surveys. Moving on a little bit, because again, we're kind of trying to keep to time here, but a little bit. But just perhaps to you, Meryl, thinking about again that this kind of same question I posed, thinking about the student perspective, but also now in terms of the university perspective as well. We've talked a lot about the social parts again, the university culture, the identity of an institution. But what about kind of balancing that back with, again, the academic excellence, I suppose, of the university, really?
Yeah, I think it's really important to realize that those two parts are not exclusive. I mean, they are more like counterweights. When students feel at home and they feel like they're part of the university and the university culture, then their grades will go up. We actually saw some results from research papers in the Netherlands on that students who feel at home, who have a nice student journey or an induction period, they're more likely to actually keep good grades and finish their program on time. So by making sure students engage with each other, with the staff, with the university culture, you actually prime them for better results and faster finish. Of course, you can also make a lot of different academic challenges in which you can prepare them for upcoming tests or for particular topics. I mean, for the university in Salford, we actually wrote a few challenges that are coming up right before the testing week. And we asked them about what's your best study tip? When are you starting to study for the tests? Have you already started? Why not? And in hindsight, we actually asked them also a bit about the level of the test. Was it expected or was it harder than you expected? Did it fit the program? So you get a lot of valuable feedback in that way as well.
Yeah, maybe to add, one of the, let's say, student journey or onboarding goals is academic. So you have a social goal, academic goal, and a practical goal. And practical goal meaning where to go to when you want to go to the library, etc. But looking from the academic perspective, we also asked them in advance, okay, what kind of profession would you like to take up after you finish this school? Do you know which or what will be your favorite course when you look at the second year of the program, right? So you already look ahead in your studies instead of doing that only after summer, 20 minutes before class, or probably within the first lecture after summer, right? You know how it goes. So we try to actively challenge them also to look beyond the point where they are at that moment, but look further than that into their program as well.
And there's also the way of flipping the classroom. For the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht, we actually developed some challenges about programmatic assessment and feedback literacy, where we asked students to read a small article or watch a small YouTube video, and there was a short quiz afterwards to make sure they actually read it or watched it. And then during the lecture time, the lecturer would go like, okay, we've seen this, now we can start with this topic. What do we think? Did you already possess feedback literacy, or are you starting out? So you could use it as a warming activity, so to speak, in front of the lecture as well.
And this also relates back to I think Edumondo launched a blog recently about the sticky campus, isn't it? The sticky campus being the idea, I think, that the more you can bring students onto campus and make them stay and make them want to stay, for around all of the social things and everything else that's going on, actually the more they're on campus, the more likely they are then to kind of engage more with their studies and do well in their studies as well. So this also links quite nicely back to the sticky campus as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah, but more in general, as a university, you want to use all your resources as effective and efficient as possible, right? So that's the buildings, that's your school, which is often empty in our case. So you can use that more effectively and efficiently, and that is also for classroom settings where sometimes teachers are only there in front of 10 10 students. That's not effective. So from that purpose, looking at using your resources wisely, I think there is a lot to be gained in university world, and the sticky campus is one example of that, where you use your resources as being the grounds more than only for lecturing.
Mhm.
Okay, well, on to our final topic about data generation. And we might have to cut this topic a little bit shorter because we're already, just under 10 minutes now until the top of the hour. By the way, to all our participants, if you have any questions based on what's been discussed already, please feel free to start putting those questions into the chat now, and then that way we can try to make sure we leave enough time to address some of those questions. But equally, if you want to follow up afterwards with questions as well, we'll put some contact details up, I think, on the last slide. So that's fine, of course. But in terms of data generation, so to our speakers today, like, what will the BrightBirds app allow you to do in terms of getting meaningful data that you can use to actively measure and track student engagement throughout their academic journey?
Yeah, well, it can do a lot actually, but usually with the universities, we have some kind of consultation session where we actually ask them, besides the generic student journey goals like academic, social, and operational, what would you like? What is one of your key points? For instance, it can be sustainability, it can be the sticky campus part, it can be anything else. And then we develop challenges based on what the goal of the university is and what kind of data the university wants to generate. One of the goals could also be to improve the data for the PTES or the NSS. And then we can take some questions from the NSS or the PTES and put those in a gamified shell in BrightBirds as well. So universities can actually see before students end their program what they would possibly score later on, and maybe even have time to rectify that. So the data that you want to get out of BrightBirds, that we're really able to personalize that for each individual university.
Yeah, because it reminds me of you said an app, because there is of course a very practical, let's say, tutor dashboard in which all this data is available. So I prefer to mention it as being a concept, right? We use it in our school as a concept to get more fun and engaging students. So which is an app and a dashboard, and you have to have really good content, because gamification is nice, but you have to have the content right first, and the rest comes after, right? So what you said, if you look at an NSS result in which communication scores very low on your side, then you could design some challenges for students that are about this communication, and so then you treat them as a partner, as a partner, and you get feedback, and you are able to improve this communication throughout their first, second, third year, as an iterative process. That's a hard word, my bad.
Yeah, because that's actually what students really like. When they say something, they want to make sure that they're heard. They want to be told if something happens, and if something happens, they want to have it confirmed that it was actually what they needed or what they wanted. And BrightBirds has an immediate response function. So when students fill out a poll or a question, you can immediately see the results in the dashboard. And then we have a message function, which you can actually send them an update from, hey, we've seen you answered this and this, we're going to work on it, and we'll keep you updated. So it's really low key as well for the university part. And because the students get that notification with a small piece of text, they're more inclined to read it than a big email with a written update. That's usually less effective. At least
okay, so
Yeah.
So we've got one thing is wanting to boost, first of all, the engagement with a survey, right? So boosting the number of responses that we get. And then second thing is hopefully that the data we get will demonstrate that the students are more engaged with the university life and with their studies. And then the last piece is that, using that data, what are we going to do with that data? How are we going to let that inform our future direction and developments across the university for student success strategies and so forth? So I suppose on that note, like, what specific examples or steps, actionable steps, can students take, can universities take to use that data to well, to provide insights, but also then, to inform their developments?
Well, it depends also on the university structure. I mean, if a lecturer notices it, it's different than when a dean notices the results. So you have to probably bring it higher up the ladder as well. And at least in the Netherlands, it usually goes like this. Then you find some result where you want to work on, and then you form an action group. And we have experienced that action groups usually work best when it's not just lecturers or staff participating, but also some students. So you try to get the entire stakeholders in there, and then try to improve on what's necessary.
Yeah, and again, I think it's all about. I think 3 months ago we did some sort of question where students really wanted to have even more. They wanted to have even more bigger saying in how the program is constructed. Of course, that's maybe a bit of a Dutch cultural thing. That our students are very direct and want to be on the same level as the rest, as us. But you know, if they are motivated, you want to get them in and you want to get them on board. And as I said, looking at the data, you can use it proactively instead of reactive, and building improvements throughout the year. So, and there's a lot of examples. If you want to hear some more, I'll be happy to share them. But they're really on items that also are in an NSS or in a survey around communication or about the program, about the even about the scheduling of their classes, right? All these kinds of things come back.
Yeah, and sometimes it's quite easily fixable and you don't need a long-term group working on it. We, for instance, had at some point a problem with classrooms that they had 5 minutes to swap, and then they had to move 3 buildings over, and that's just not possible. But sometimes these technical errors occur, and if students will actually tell you about it or share their concerns, you can quite easily act on it.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot more to say about this, and I'm sure I have plenty more examples, Stefan, as well. So perhaps that's for another webinar or something else at a later date. But for now, given the time we've got just a few minutes left, Meryl, did you want to say something about this slide here about the NSS?
Well, it was mostly an example. We took a look at the NSS results of last year, and we picked some themes out of there, which we think might be actually a nice fit for some challenges in BrightBirds, and also some themes that had a big discrepancy from the benchmark towards the university that scored the lowest. It's not that nice to say, but sometimes that happens. So we saw it, for instance, with the assessment part and the feedback part, that the benchmark is really nice. Actually, it's a 77.8, but the biggest difference is minus 27.7%. So that's quite a lot. So you could add quite easily some challenges in BrightBirds to boost the uptake on the assessment and feedback part, in which you already gather some data and maybe change some structures around to make sure that after a few years you score way better. And the same goes for the academic support or the learning resources. We used to get a lot of negative feedback in our form of the NSS for the University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht, because there were not enough study spots in the library. So that takes a while to change, but it is possible. And it's always nice if you know that after a few months instead of after 4 years. So these were kind of examples for which parts you could boost your NSS score by using BrightBirds.
Yeah, okay. Well, looking forward to going into that in a bit more detail with you another time then. Did you want to say something, I think, Stefan, about this onboarding journey, or do we think we don't have time for that? Up to you.
Well, for now, just really brief, is that what I said before is that in most cases the onboarding process is made up by incidental items or program items, right? And everybody has a different responsibility within each of these items. So what we try to do is and shell is the right word, not an umbrella. My bad. But the shell over the
we knew what you meant.
over the complete process, meaning, so you look at it from when the student signs up for your program until the end of the first 100 days. That's one program that you have to align, and that's what we do, and that's what this model is about. Which in each phase you have different goals which you work on. but that's more like a theoretical thing. In the end, you can see that the off-boardees, let's say the students that leave, are also very valuable in this process for gathering feedback and knowing why they drop out. So that's a nice add-on to this model instead of other models.
Okay, cool. Okay, and I think basically that's the end of the webinar. We're right on the top of the hour, so we're exactly an hour in. So we're really conscious that everyone's given up their time today, so we don't want to keep anyone longer. I'm sure you'll have busy schedules. So thanks so much to all our participants for joining today, and well, thanks so much to our 3 guest speakers as well, Huub, Meron, and Stefan. It's been great talking to you about this, and shame I couldn't join you in the room there. It's nice to have all 3 of you together.
Hey, guys, nice and cozy.
But me joining in from Bristol here, it's a shame I couldn't join you today as well in the office, but really good to talk to you. And I think there's clearly so many more examples, so much expertise here in the room about all different ways that BrightBirds can be used to improve engagement. So I'm sure we'll probably have enough to say to have a whole other webinar in a month or so, or a couple of months. But again, to all our webinar attendees, thanks so much for joining. If you have any more questions, please feel free to email us. You can get in touch with us via the details on this slide that we're sharing right now, or you can contact Meryl directly on that phone number as well. That's it, webinar over. But thanks so much for joining, the 3 of you. It's been really interesting.
Thanks for hosting, Liam.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Glad to. It's been really interesting, and well, back on with the rest of the work, isn't it? But
Yes.
All right.
Have a nice day.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.